Joining me now from our bureau in Washington, D.C., Democrat political strategist Theron Johnson. Theron, Joe Biden looks weak. He looks feeble. You have Bernie Sanders. These are the leading candidates. Bernie Sanders, he's just an old Marxist, and he's starting to look like an old curmudgeon Marxist. And then you have Elizabeth Warren, who's now the champion of taxation and redistribution of wealth. I look at these people and throw in the other ones just for fun, but these three leading candidates, I say to myself, unbiasedly say to myself, Trump in a landslide in November 2020.
Well, Graham, it's so great to be back with you, and I know you had to, as you put it, sort of suffer through a debate where 10 candidates for the President of the United States of America to go on to be the Democratic nominee had a really robust conversation about issues that matter most to the American people. I was very proud to see these candidates, some more representative of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, and there was definitely some moderate views that were expressed during this debate. I do think that it is a mischaracterization is to call everyone on that stage a socialist. I think what you had was a very civil debate about policy issues that matter the most to the American people. And more importantly, you saw people come together and kind of take a deeper dive into their plans. Graham, you and I have debated a lot on this show before, and I think the one common thread of where we are on different sides is how do you pay for good government resources for the American people? I think when you look at health care, you finally saw a robust debate about, number one, how do we make sure, as Elizabeth Warren said, make sure that Americans are secure with health care at the lowest cost. And then you also have Bernie Sanders and others who want a Medicare for all. The one thing I was the most proud about is that I think that the American people were able to see that these people are competent. Number one, they're qualified. But number three, they have a plan to try to make sure that Americans are being put back to work, and more importantly, they have affordable health care. The last thing I'll say is this. I think that when you come to the whole gun safety, gun control issue, I think that former Congressman Beto O'Rourke was right in what he said, is because like I know, Graham, is that it's about two things. It's about universal background checks, which most people in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party support. But I'm also here to say on your show that it's also about responsible gun ownership. And you can have those two things and not violate a Second Amendment right to the American people. So I do want to kind of push back on this narrative that you kind of shared in the beginning of your show.
Well, we'll have more on that in a little bit, but the health care, I don't agree at all that government should be involved in health care at any level. Frankly, I think government has screwed up health care, and Obamacare has screwed it up. The VA is a mess. It works for some people, but overall, it's a mess. It's a great example of how government can't handle something like this. But Joe Biden had a moment that really, I say to him, he actually had a couple of moments where he defended the Constitution. He was the only person on stage who actually used the word Constitution, so I got to give him a couple of points for that. He actually stood up against socialism one time when it came to health care. But then he had this moment where I literally had to say it ain't so, Joe. Roll tape.
There are so many people who are in jail and shouldn't be in jail. The whole means by which this should change is the whole model has to change. We should be talking about rehabilitation. Nobody should be in jail for a nonviolent crime.
Okay, so that means that Bernie Madoff should not be in jail?
Well, I think what the former vice president is saying, Graham, and look, if you look across this nation, I have the great honor to live in the state of Georgia, where we have a Republican governor and Governor Nathan Deal, who's the former governor of Georgia, who basically gets a lot of credit for criminal justice reform. You have other governors all across the country who are Republicans. And so what the former vice president was saying is that we have people right now who are in jail for nonviolent misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies. The problem, Graham, is that when these folks come out of jail, many of whom are good people who made some bad choices, who've served their time, but they're unable to find a job. They're unable to provide for their families. And so one of the things that's going on across the country right now is looking at giving people a second chance. And so let me be very clear. I think the vice president has made his stance former vice president has made his stance very clear on where he is in criminal justice reform. But I think, Graham, you can dig deep in your soul and find that when people make mistakes, they go serve their time, they pay their fees and their fines, and they want to come back out and sort of do, the right thing about being a productive citizen in this country. They should have that right to do so.
All right, but criminal justice reform isn't just letting people out of jail, and Bernie Madoff should be in jail because he committed white-collar crimes. There are plenty of people who should be in jail because they committed so-called white call our crimes. It's still a crime, whether it's a violent crime or not.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.